You're live.
Welcome back to the Vermont Senate Committee on Government Operations meeting of Wednesday, the 21st of May, 2025. Sorry for the break, folks, but I had to get that taken care of. Let me suggest if we want to begin the discussion with, and because we just had a representative from the Attorney General's office, to go, I think section 14 is the beginning part of where this topic happens. And then it's repeated a couple, 3 times later.
Yeah, to begin with campaign on page 12. Yeah. And then it's in sections through section 17.
Yeah, line 7 on page 13 is the one that I think is the first reference to a political committee, independent expenditure only political committee or political party that has accepted contributions or made expenditures of $1,000 or more during the local election cycle for the purpose of influencing a local election or supporting or opposing one or more candidates, shall file 10 days before and 2 weeks after the local election. I think it's repeated again, and but this says local election cycle. So I assume that Senator Vyhovsky is proposing that we change that $1,000 to a $500 threshold, which would align it with candidates. And so I'm open for discussion. And you can become a salesperson if you like. And I'm pretty firm on staying with what is in the original bill only, not to take sides on whether this makes sense or not, only that if we change it, this is another, I think it's 12th or 13th amendment that we've changed as it came over from the other body. So
Is it that many?
well,
We're doing a strike all, so it won't look like that.
okay. I could, yeah, I think it's probably 10 anyway. We change the date for filing for write-in candidates. There's for 7 o'clock election day. We
That's
mentioned
the
the
third
fact.
day. Yeah.
We changed one of the other dates, maybe more than one actually. One at their suggestion, to be fair, but also anyway.
Right.
So I'm open for committee input on this particular issue.
I'm supportive of aligning people and PACs in terms of what is, at what point they have to report their finance, do a finance report.
Okay.
I think that's what this does. Yeah.
All right. Like I said, I'm willing.
I think if we're required to, as individuals, report at $500, that a PAC or corporation or individual, because it could be all those things,
Mhm.
but be required to do exactly the same thing.
Mhm.
In full transparency for the public to appreciate and understand who's financing that argument, or who's financing that attack, or who's financing whatever it is. If we are held, they need to be held to the same standard we are held to, if at all possible, in this one small way in which we can do that.
I'm supportive of moving to 500 as a compromise from what I'd like to do, which is eliminating the thresholds across the board and making everybody report everything. But given that it is fairly late in the session, I am willing to sort of compromise to the let's just align things where we're at now.
Okay.
But I don't think PACs and independent expenditure, whatever's should be less transparent.
They should be as transparent as we are required to be.
Given the problem of dark money in our system, I think they should probably be forced to be more transparent, but again, I'm coming to a space of like, at the very least, they should be as transparent.
Senator Harder.
Guess I'm in favor of leaving it the way it is, but yeah, I didn't get any PAC money, so
Well, that wasn't the question.
yeah, I know. I'm just saying that. No, I'm okay with the wording the way it is.
Okay, so it will be up to Senator White when she returns to break the tie. Let me ask a question, if I could, in the interim. when we say report, so say there's a radio ad or a TV ad or a print ad or whatever ad it is that,
Mass media.
is taking a position on either a candidate or an issue. Is the Sunshine for Vermont Inc. PAC identifying enough for people to understand who paid for it? Or does there have to be a list of actual people who are part of the Sunshine for Vermont Inc.?
I believe it just has to say Sunshine,
For Vermont Inc.
right, Tim?
So the radio station would have to report that Sunshine Vermont Inc. Or, some, yes, I think it would just have to say Sunshine for Vermont Inc.
I believe that's all.
The PAC, if they have raised over 500, has to report
And as
where they
registered.
raised it from, but that's up to the PAC to deal with.
Okay. And its executive officers would be listed somewhere that the general public. could-
Ideally, although they're very good at hiding even that.
Okay, but I'm just asking you
Yeah,
from a legal.
I- well, Tim would have.
Do you know, Tim?
Yes,
And
and
you can join us at the table. if you'd like.
for the record, Tim Devlin, Legislative Council. I'm pulling up Title 17, Elections, Chapter 61, where we have campaign finance, and in particular to this question about mass media activities. We have, let's see, in section 17, 2971, there is, it's a titled report with mass media activities. And this is where, this should contain information answering your question. So let's see, in addition to other reports for this, that need to be filed under the chapter, a person who makes expenditures for any one mass media activity totaling $500 or more, within 45 days of an election, needs to file a report with the Secretary of State and send a copy to each candidate. So this is an after the fact reporting requirement, not essentially attached to the media itself. That report shall identify the person who made the expenditure, the name of each candidate, whose name and likeness is included in the activity, the amount and date of the expenditure, to whom it was paid, and purpose of the expenditure. And then let's see what else do we have. Okay, that's essentially it. Let me just see where else that term comes up. Just definition there. So just kind of reading through this briefly, doesn't necessarily seem like there's much of a but on the media itself tag.
Okay, and the $500 threshold you mentioned is already existing law?
For
Yes.
media.
Yeah, for a mass media activity totaling
Okay.
$500.
For PACs and humans?
That's for let's see, any person.
So humans, not PACs.
It would be, no person includes a corporate person and other entities. So really individuals and legal persons.
So there's a misalignment right now, even within the PAC language, in that for mass media, they have to report it by 500. But for other stuff, it's 1,000.
Correct, I think.
So for mass
Yeah.
media, it's the same.
Mhm.
For financial, so then I would hope you two might consider coming over.
I mean, that's confusing if within the same group of people, there's two different thresholds.
Well, I'd like to wait till Senator White has a chance to weigh in for.
But that, so what are the other points, Brian, that those different figures would come into play? In a mass media report, which you raise, in finance reporting, and then where else?
Let's see.
Any
So,
expenditure?
we've
Is
introduced,
the expended, but everybody has to, I mean, that means they have to do a finance report.
and then also in the definitions of what these political committees are. So right now, a political committee or political action committee is
Or a person who's focusing on the subject.
let's see, any formal, informal committee of two or more person, that's current law, or it's going to be adjusted. So it'll be one person that accepts contributions of $1,000 or more, or makes expenditures of $1,000 or more. And
So we'd have to
similarly,
add that, but we'd have to align it there too.
that is a possible place for adjustment. Also, the proposed definition, or the proposed amendment to the definition for independent expenditure only political committees also has that $1,000 threshold in there. Let me see where else dollar signs could come up in here. And then let's see, I believe it would then go to, so we have and subchapter 2, we have registration and maintenance requirements. So individuals currently under the law, $500, let's see. Then political committees, $1,000. The proposed language will mirror that for super PACs and let's see where else. Political parties are $1,000 right now. Let's see, and let's get our contribution limits. Let's see what we have. Different.
Well, we're not talking contribution.
No.
Right.
That's definitely too big to open up right now.
And
As much as we.
so it looks like it's primarily in, just basically what qualifies as any of these categories that must report, and then the reporting themselves. So the definitions and then
Definitions of reporting and threshold for everything.
And the argument from at least the two of us is across the board threshold should be the same.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same in mass media, which is helpful to.
Yeah.
And so the proposed language will take that $5,000 for candidates and lower to 0. So it would be.
Well, that's what I want to do, but what I'm willing to compromise
Okay,
because it's
so I
still late
understand.
in the session is that we actually just align everything at 500.
Okay, so that would be removing the proposed changes and the latest draft for the candidates, leaving it at $500. And then adjusting the $1,000 down to 500 for PACs and super PACs. Is that
Yeah, the only thing we're changing is the PACs and super PACs from 1,000 to 500.
okay?
We're leaving the candidates' responsibilities and requirements the same.
Wait, Tim, is what came to us from the House eliminated the 500 threshold for individuals, or is that
For candidates.
for candidates? So the House brought candidates to 0.
So, those were, so right now in the bill, and sorry if I'm reading.
No, I see it. I'm looking at it.
Let's see, so we are in. Good registration, 17, then 14, campaign reports, candidates for state office, general assembly, county office, political committees, local parties. And so here we have the original language is each candidate for state office, general assembly, or a 2-year county office who has rolled over any surplus into his or her campaign, or who has made expenditures or accepted contributions of $500 or more during the 2-year general cycle, except as provided below. Each political committee and has now filed and each political party required to register shall report as follows. And then we have go to the original one. Skip one. Bear with me.
Because my understanding of what the House does, and I am bearing with you sort of not very well, is that they sent us an elimination on the $500 cap to register in the campaign finance system, but that the reporting requirement was still at 500, like in terms of filing a campaign finance report, they did have to be registered in the system.
Right, the registration, absolutely.
Okay.
Let me just double check maybe I have some questions.
If we're lowering candidates to 0, I'm circling back down, it should be 0.
I don't think they did it.
So. Okay, so we have the registration. Then. Candidate registration, right, so candidate registration is section 17, BSA 2921. Take a look what we have there. That is. Okay, so for the registration of candidates, each candidate who has made expenditures and accepted contributions of $500 or more in the election cycle shall register with the Secretary of State within 10 days of reaching the $500 threshold or the date of the next report requiring the candidate of this chapter, whichever occurs first. That's current law.
Mhm.
So this bill in section 13 will propose to strike that minimum for that threshold to read each candidate who files a consent form shall register with the Secretary of State prior to the consent, stating the name, address, et cetera, for the purpose of registration. So no longer will they have to go hit that $500 before they register. So now turning to reporting, which is in the above section, above sections, bouncing around here. Okay, so we have. That's
What page,
64.
ma'am?
I don't know yet.
Sorry.
We're bouncing between current law and the bill at the
Okay.
moment.
Oh, okay.
So section 14 has campaign reports. This is candidates for state office, general assembly, county office.
What's the page is that then?
It's pages 12 and 13.
Yes.
Okay.
So
They
the
cut out, crossed out $500.
We have, in this bill, we are setting candidates at 0. There is no threshold for candidate reporting anymore.
Right, we are requiring all candidates to report all
Yes.
expenditures.
and
Why
so
didn't we know that till today?
here we have in 2064, the revised language will say each candidate for Senate, state office, general assembly, or to your county office, who has made expenditures, removing the threshold there. And then also each political committee, independent expenditure, only local committee that's not filed already, shall file with the Secretary of State campaign finance reports as follows. And those are
So the top of page 13 is, it definitely got rid of.
So that's the 4-year count. So it's just agreeing with the 2-year.
Right, but I think that we're even more within our measure, given that the House completely eliminated thresholds for candidates to align paths with the work the House did for candidates and just get rid of the
That's
thresholds.
where we are.
Yes, I vote for 500.
Oh, no,
and-
hold on. So the House sent us a bill that eliminates the threshold for individual candidates. There is no longer a $500 threshold. Everything has to be reported. Great. So what I'm now suggesting is that we align PACs with that same language and eliminate the threshold.
And before you came in, we were talking about aligning it at 500.
But then we discovered that the House eliminated the $500 threshold for candidates.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I didn't realize that was in that until today. So shame on me. for
I didn't
that.
realize that till right now. So,
Well, we'll share the shame then. Here's
It's
my,
okay, all of us.
okay, so here's my only concern with making it 0. Many of us enjoy getting contributions of under $100 because then they can remain, I don't want to say anonymous. You have to report it, but you don't have to say who it is that's, and I don't think that would change with this.
That does
That
not.
doesn't touch that at all.
Okay.
But there are-
No
I
contribution.
don't think you were in the room for this. There are currently 12 states that have no threshold for candidates or PACs.
yeah,
That's zero.
I heard Nevada, but now we're up to 12.
So I've got Alaska, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Mexico, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, Rhode Island, West Virginia, and Wyoming.
Rhode Island, one New England.
All have a 0, and Massachusetts.
Okay.
For both PACs and candidates, 0. Everything's reported. But the $100 anonymous piece is
Yeah,
still,
okay.
that we don't touch that. But we're just aligning the PAC work with the good work the House did.
I'm in favor of full disclosure as much as possible, as often as possible.
And
Let me ask Tim this, without putting you on the spot. Do you know why the House? No, let me rephrase that because that does put you on the spot. Was there any testimony taken from the House about aligning this the way we're suggesting doing? In other words, I have to wonder if they took out the $500 requirement for candidates, why they didn't do the same thing for PACs and this, excuse me again for having to look it up, independent expenditure only political committee. It would seem like if they were gonna sort of be consistent, they would have taken testimony at least about 0 for everybody.
but Tim wasn't back in the legislature.
Oh, okay.
I've only been, right,
So I think in all fairness, you weren't part of that conversation, so it's up. But we could ask Matt.
I would encourage you to reach out to the House committee
Okay.
about this, and exactly what their take on it was. Secretary of State's office did speak to the thresholds for candidates in support of, reducing those
To zero.
500 to zero.
Okay.
I can't say with any, authority one way or another exactly what, if any, conversation was had.
Maybe we could quickly see if the Secretary of State would be willing to weigh in this afternoon, and we could, I don't have Matt's cell phone, but we could ask Matt.
No, I have a cell phone.
Yeah, so, but then the Secretary of State has weighed in suggesting we talk to the AG, which we did, and they won't weigh in.
Right.
But I do think that the fact that 12 other states have a $0 threshold for both PACs and candidates puts us in a better space to stand on, and that we're not the only one suggesting this. And it hasn't been litigated.
So rather than, I mean, I could text Matt and see if he can
Yeah,
come down,
let's do
or
it.
we can do it tomorrow. Because again, we're
Either
not gonna move this bill in the next.
Then
12
let's do it tomorrow.
But I strongly feel that PACs should be as transparent as people.
I know.
Oh, I think many of us agree with you. I think that all money should be transparent in elections.
Okay. So are you willing to wait and see how Representative Byron feels about why they didn't
Yes,
align the two?
so.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear from Matt. As I feel, we're just
We have
repeating the good work they did.
We have until 3, if he was willing to come down. Maybe.
I just texted his committee assistant. Do you want me to ask her to send him that?
Yes.
That would be great.
Because
You are our secret weapon, Megan.
If he so chooses, we will interrogate the representative from Virgins.
okay, well, I think regardless of how Senator Hart and I vote, you already have 3. And I would be hard to try to argue the point.
Yeah.
If in fact it's 0 already.
Are there any other surprises for us?
Well, I don't know that that was a surprise from Tim's point of view.
No, I think we just.
We just didn't read over the
Overlooked
bill
it.
well enough, I guess.
Or when we initially went over it, it was a while ago.
So what I didn't understand, because I do remember that we lowered it to 500 for registration. I just didn't take that into the next step of reporting as well. And I'm completely supportive of that work from the House.
As opposed to the other work.
Do we have, well, I wish I knew that was coming. Because we do still have to go back.
To one other piece.
Oh, there's more than one.
That's fair.
So we have ranked choice voting, we have one bite at the apple, we have,
Those are the 2 that I think remain.
and now we have a third.
So yeah, section 1. Which is a 1-sentence section. And then section
Often
4
authority.
and 5. Or the other 2, I would.
Sections 1, sections 4 and 5, right?
So assuming you count what we just did as a victory of sorts.
Would count that as a victory.
Wonderful. With that in mind,
Not personally.
no,
This is
no, no.
not personal.
If I were to suggest that we delete section 1. I'm wondering how people might feel about that. And I know you don't have to tell me because I already know how you feel about it. This would remove the provision for ranked choice voting. And I know how I go on it. So the 3 of you will determine whether or not that happens.
Yeah, where did you end up? May I?
Sure.
Senator Hart, where did you land on ranked choice voting and your comfortability with the report? You're what?
I mirrored it.
You're mirroring, you're the same vote as, okay. Okay, well then that, okay,
So to be clear, my vote on that section would be to not remove it.
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
yes, and so,
So I guess then my follow-up question, if I may, before you go to.
I have no questions.
My follow-up question is, if we removed it, would that remove your support of the bill altogether?
Well, I can't support the bill with one by candidacy in it, regardless of whether or not ranked choice is in it or not.
Oh,
Okay. So your deal breaker is one bite at the apple.
and ranked choice.
I do want ranked choice in, it, but my point is it's all contingent, right? If one bite stays in, I'm a no. If one bite comes out and ranked choice stays in, I'm a yes.
And you're the opposite. You're both the opposite of that.
They are the exact opposite.
But you're not, you're like one bite candidacy is like you could take or leave.
No,
it.
I want that.
You want that.
And I
Okay,
want
so
ranked
you-
choice up, so yes.
I think on one bite, we're 4-1, and I think on ranked choice, we're probably
3-2.
3-2.
Okay,
Because I support ranked. I mean, this is
I
just,
understand. It's a study.
it's a study. I just
Thank you.
can't get. I can't. Yeah, on things that are actually being implemented immediately, I can fall on my sword, but on things where we're looking at this, particularly when, particularly, I think the thing that I feel the most strongly about with ranked choice voting is that it reduces a lot of the divisive nastiness that we are watching happen with elections around the country and even in our own state. We had some pretty divisive moments and ugly moments in our campaign this year. And I have to say, when everyone is competing for a vote,
Mhm.
whether I'm, Larry, let's say I want you to have to be, list me as your first, second, third choice. You can't afford to be nasty and awful and alienate a bunch of people because you want to be on their list of who they vote for.
Mhm.
It's now absolutely standard practice in a number in certain states and certain jurisdictions. I do appreciate the fact that Burlington had it and then gave it up.
And then took it back. They have it again.
And they have it again for all elections.
Yes, they do. They originally passed it for city council. They had that instance where they had a special city council election very shortly after it went into place. They had no real ability to train people how to do it. They did it. They did it successfully. There was no statistically significant increase in defective ballots, which means the voters understood it. And then the subsequent town meeting cycle, they voted to implement it for all elections.
So now everybody's elected by
Yes.
ranked choice, not
This most
statewide.
recent mayor was elected by ranked. I mean, ranked choice didn't go into effect because she cleared the required majority. But I think Burlington's a perfect case example for they did it. They did not find it confusing. And then the voters were like, we liked that so much, we want to extend it to all of the elections.
And were the elections, I mean, just from my point of view, which was it less contentious as a result of everyone's trying to court a vote?
I don't live in Burlington, so it would be hard for me
You
to.
represent.
I do represent Burlington but nobody was campaigning to me, so it is difficult for me to know the fine tune ins and outs of that. The other thing for me about this report is and I did sift through all 148 responses to the town clerk's study, and what I heard loud and clear is that many of the people who are unsure want more information and they want it sooner rather than later. There were a lot of people, and what I saw a lot of was the people who are already supportive that saying, I don't need a report, I already support this.
Right.
Okay,
And I think there's so much misinformation,
Yes.
sadly, about it.
But I did hear from the town clerks that if we are considering, they want the information from this report and they want it sooner rather than
Is it
later.
in the House version?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we went to conference committee,
I'm way ahead of you. And quite frankly, I was not persuaded to change the way I feel about the ranked choice, so I will continue to advocate that we remove that provision. And it looks like we have a 3-2 vote to leave it in.
Right.
So let me, if I can, just pause there, because we've been joined by our House counterpart. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. And thanks for the suggestion. Yes, Matt, please join us. So we're going to be joined by the chair of the House Government Operations Committee, Matt Byron, who could potentially, and I'll just, if I can, in 25 words or less, Matt, try to explain why we had wonderfully kind of a little bit confused here. Well, maybe not confused, but we just need a little bit of your political savvy.
I am digging back into the old hard copies here, so, yes.
So we understood, and we weren't paying enough attention to what we apparently were doing, that the $500 threshold for reporting campaign finance for candidates has been struck. And now 0 is the threshold that will require a registered candidate for statewide or general assembly offices or 2-year county offices or 4-year county offices to file campaign finance reports. And so, first of all, I guess, is that what you guys took out?
I do recall that. Now, again, I'm going into the, like, probably a week
Yeah, right,
brain
okay.
bank.
Do you have a copy of our last iteration?
Yours, no.
All right.
That
And it's
is
the
there.
same as yours.
Oh, it
The
is?
first section.
Okay.
Oh, no, sorry,
We're talking about section
You're right, it's section 14.
at 13 and 14.
13.
There you go.
So yes,
12, 13,
I
and
will
14.
happily look at the words on the page.
I think, is that section 13, 14,
Mhm.
or is that just section?
No, it is just section 14.
It's 14, it begins in section 13. You
Yeah.
can see the struck language.
The highlights indicate what the committee is proposing to change.
Thank you, council.
It's page 13.
Correct.
That the line, yeah.
Yeah, but it's
We
section.
got a little on 12 that's highlighted, and then the,
There you go.
oh, then there's a lot of
Some
highlighting
do.
going on over
But it
here.
isn't
But
highlighted.
it's the struck language on the page before
Well,
that
that's
you'll
the
see. the
first part of
500.
the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me.
Order of operations. We're
Page
going to look at first,
13.
the strike of the highlight.
Page 13,
Yes,
lines 1 through 4.
thank you.
Here. From page 12.
Yeah, so the language in this says, and I do recall the expenditure is the trigger.
Okay.
For the reporting, correct, council?
The,
In 2?
Any expenditure is the trigger.
right, there was some back and forth with, the McCoy amendment to have it kind of conditioned on that, but I think that was then,
Mhm.
can't remember exactly what that was. It was integrated as to when they would have to file their treasurer information, I think it was.
Yes.
Then. So. Exactly what that did.
Current law,
Yeah.
I think, says $500. As soon as you're a candidate and you have taken in 500 or spent 500, you have to file campaign finance reports.
That is correct.
This appears to be now gone, and any registered candidate, regardless of whether they raise a penny, has to file campaign finance reports.
So this is about if I'm reading this correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, if the expenditure language it's about like making a payment, not necessarily the accrual. Or am I misunderstanding?
No, you're correct. So let's see, we have each candidate for state office, general assembly, 2-year office, who has made expenditures. There it is. So yes, there's a distinction here between receiving contributions and making expenditures, so when it needs to be, reported. So
Thank you.
you're right, Sheriff Irong, upon the trigger is making an expenditure is when there needs to be a report filed.
Sure.
However, so the removing of the contribution,
So it's not raised, it's expended.
right, and so there's no consideration to contribution here as to when the reports start to need to be filed. So that's an important nuance there too.
Senator White.
Can I just ask, so that means, just as a hypothetical scenario, so that means if in the next election cycle, if we pass this bill, if I raised $250, but then I didn't spend any money on my campaign,
You're gonna have to
I wouldn't have to file.
That is my understanding.
You have to register, but you don't have to file.
If I don't file.
That's current law though, too, because this threshold's 500. So you.
Oh, let me rephrase that.
Good distinction, Senator.
I could spend $500 next, wait, what? No, now I'm.
You raised 500 and
Then you have to report currently.
Yes, wait, now I'm totally confused.
Hold on.
But if it's not based on if I spend money.
Right.
That's the difference.
This is
Right,
based on
my
what you
point
spent.
is
Yes.
currently, if you raise $250 and you don't spend a penny, you do not have to report that because the threshold for reporting is you have to raise more than $500. Under this, it would still be true that you could raise $250, not spend a penny and not have to report it. What is different?
Yes, is if
Is
I
it-
spent money.
Right, what is different is current law, if you raised $501 and spent $0, you have to report. With this, if you raise $501 but don't spend anything, you don't.
No, that
So-
second part is wrong.
No,
You still have to register, but you only have to file the reports.
correct.
Now I'm.
But if you
totally
raise
lost.
$10 and you spend $1 under
Yes,
this, you have to report.
Yes, okay.
You have to report all, it's very simple. You have to report all expenses. all
Regardless of how
expenditures,
much you raise.
regardless of how much you raise,
Okay, that's fair.
Which I think is a
understand.
better system.
which is good, I think.
Okay,
Transparency and what people aren't as concerned about how much you're raising. They are very concerned about how you're spending it.
Okay,
sure, maybe. I don't know logically if I totally agree.
Well, we have limits on how much you're able to get from any one person
Yeah.
or any one or corporation or person. Other,
Well, can I ask another hypothetical then? So let's say I raised $501
yeah.
and under this new law, and I spend my own personal money. Like I, Rebecca White, go out and buy lawn signs. And I don't use the money that I fundraise, but I personally, then would it trigger? I'd still have,
Yes, you're still an
Yeah.
expenditure.
it's still an expenditure. Okay,
Consider
then
a
there-
contribution to your own campaign.
Right. Then because that would be the flip for me is self-funded candidates. I think,
they still have.
But they still have to park the money in the
Yeah.
campaign account. So if you actually played that process the way I believe you just
Yeah.
articulated,
yeah,
and you used personal money,
it's still,
that would actually be a bigger whoopsie,
yeah.
right?
Senator
Yeah.
Pelosi.
So
Okay,
to Senator Clarkson's earlier point, if I raise $10,000 but I don't spend a single dollar influencing the election, who cares? But
I still care.
but I'm not using that money to influence the election. It's just sitting
Exactly
there.
what we're,
But could I then save that money up and then use it the next election cycle and still not have to have filed that first election? So I could be fundraising as much as I want.
well, then you
And
have
then-
more than $499.
But
Yeah,
we're
we haven't
eliminating
spent anything yet.
500.
I mean, if you haven't spent it, you could,
Well, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. So then could I roll it over for the next campaign year?
Yes.
And then I wouldn't have technically, would I then have to file all of those, all of those things?
well, you haven't
The minute
spent
I-
anything yet.
I understand.
I hear Senator White's point. I actually want to know the answer to the question because I actually agree.
Love that.
And that is, so say, here, in this hypothetical, say I run in 2026, that's the next election cycle, right? And I raise $10,000 and I don't spend a penny. And then in 2028, I raise $10,000 and I don't spend a penny. And then in 2030, I run for governor and I roll over that $20,000 that I've never reported on in my governor's campaign. And now I just have this $20,000 and nobody knows where it came from.
Yes, they do. They have to, oh, I see what you mean, that there's no paper trail. at
Right,
all.
because I didn't have to report it.
Except in our state, it's $500.
But we're
No,
eliminating
we're
that. We're
So
eliminating
you
that
have-
and saying the reporting is only contingent on expenditures.
Yeah, so
No,
basically.
because we also have an amount, if you, of contributions, you have to report about $500.
But we are eliminating that in this bill.
I thought we were just eliminating expenditures.
It is, I think.
I believe I heard council say
Maybe we're wrong. You'd still have to.
that we're only eliminating expenditures and that you have to report every expenditure. But that we have kept the threshold of you only report over $500 raised.
Is that true?
So
Whatever.
with the registration, separating that from reporting, let's go to
Mm.
reporting. So the changes in section 14 to 17 VSA 2964 will eliminate, well, let me just read the language as it is now, and then we'll reread it. Hopefully this is probably. So each candidate for state office, general assembly, or two-year county office who has rolled over any amount of surplus into their campaign or who has made an expenditure or who has accepted contributions of $500 or more during
Okay,
a two-year election, and that should be probably read. Made expenditures or accepting contributions of $500. So that will apply to both of them. Shall report. Now, the proposed modification that came over from the House and is before you now removes the maintains the expenditures, removes the requirement for beginning to file those reports if you accept contributions or the 500 expenditures of, sorry, it removes the $500 threshold and removes the contribution side of the expenditures versus contributions.
so does it create a system where what I just described could happen?
Something about rollover funds was in there.
Yeah, what-
So surplus funds can be, let's see, those can be this is under 2017 VSA 2924. How do you handle surplus campaign funds? Candidates must, let's see, they can either be contributed to other candidates, charity, Secretary of State Service Fund, rolled over into a new campaign, or carried forward for surplus maintenance, or provided in another section here, or liquidated any combination of those. So it can be carried over into new campaigns, in which you would automatically have to register with those, right? Because you have that shows there. And then if not expended, it perhaps is, I'd say, okay.
So rollover funds just get reported as rolled over from a previous
Yeah,
campaign. Where they came from
Yeah.
doesn't get reported.
Yes, every penny of above $500 that you've raised has been reported in a year
I'm not
past.
convinced that what we're doing maintains that.
Yes, I think it does.
The individual reporting requirement thresholds for the donors still exist, right? Like when it's coming in through whatever mechanism you use to
You have to
The money.
report who has given to you.
over a certain threshold, like, it's like over $100 for that
Correct.
house. I forget what it is for the Senate, perhaps 500.
Yeah, no,
So that's all enumerated in the campaign fund reports for the inflow.
And this bill does not change
This
any of
does
that.
not change
Okay,
our
then we did
reporting requirement for who gives to your campaign of $100 or more. It does change how much you have to report in terms of what you've expended, and it requires now that the minute you spend money, you have to report it. Correct?
Is that a fair characterization? I think.
Yes.
Okay,
But you could raise money and not spend it at all during your campaign and not have to report those contributions.
No, that's not
No.
true.
You have to
Okay.
report.
You have to report contributions
$100.
if they're
Your
$100.
small dollar donations would
Still be anonymous.
Those would be anonymous per the system.
Correct.
We have, but any big dollar donations are still reported.
Okay.
Your expenditure trigger with the filing is that candidate spending money, not accruing money, is what is being shared.
great, okay.
Okay,
So
I understand that.
You just spend up.
I know, I really, we're about to have it where you could run as an incumbent with no challenger, roll it
just-
over and then
Yeah,
keep it
you
going.
care.
No, the reporting of
I-
the reporting of the inflow still exists as is.
Okay, great.
So,
So
believe it or
here's
not,
my
that's not
question.
why we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason.
wow,
we have-
it wasn't even this?
But it has to do with that.
Let's
The
get to the fun
super-
part. I feel warmed up.
The super PAC, or what we have now called the Independent Expenditure
Oh,
Only
yes.
Political Committee, has $1,000 threshold. And we were wondering why, if the candidate's expenditure has turned into zero, why, or did you take any testimony that might require PACs to have that same threshold?
And because we'd like to align.
We are of the
Sure.
opinion that they should be the same.
Okay. I do recall we discussed this a lot. Again, going back into the 2-month RAM bank, I do not recall the nuance of those conversations.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I understand exactly what you're saying right now in this moment in time. So what were you thinking of doing?
It may be something that we change so that the PACs have a zero threshold for expenditures, just like candidates do.
Okay.
They still have the requirement coming in, but not necessarily going up.
Yeah, basically what we want to do, or some members of the committee want to do, is align the requirements for PACs to be exactly the same as individual candidates.
Okay, so like consistency and threshold with the consistency and statute with the thresholds.
Just for
I'm
expense.
saying my thoughts, Senator.
Was, I want to do this.
Yeah, I know you do.
I think it's a very valid point.
Yeah,
personally.
we
I
were
can't
just
speak for my
wondering,
committee,
yeah.
But I myself, as
But-
most like Rep Byron finds that point where.
Yeah, we were just wondering if that
We need to
conversation had
convince you
come
for some
up.
conference committee. So good, our work is, we've laid the groundwork for that.
I think PACs should be as transparent, if not more transparent than individual people. We get that Citizens United makes them people too, but they shouldn't be more protected than actual people.
Again, preach, Senator. So no, and that was the sort of the whole overarching like tenet of this, like this
Okay.
provision was to get a better understanding of how PAC, especially special issue PAC money,
Right.
is being.
Transparency.
Mhm.
Transparent.
So
In,
I know you can't speak for your whole committee, but would it be fair to say that if we align the PAC requirements to the individual candidate requirements, that we're continuing the good work your committee did in the air? In the vein of
I love the
transparency?
way she works.
I again. I personally take no issue,
Can't speak for the committee.
but as the chair, I personally take no issue.
But that was your intent with the expenditures.
Oh,
Was
yeah.
increased transparency.
Okay,
But yes,
Okay.
so much so, yes.
all right.
Because
Really?
we've seen some very interesting and concerning inflows of dollars on special issue campaigns over the course of time. And that seems to be an increasingly common tactic within those special issue conversations.
Correct.
And this starts the,
Yes, and we
Start
saw
right.
it really live in big time in the proposal 5 in 2 years ago. on
Mhm.
the ballot. So my question for council, Tim, is the effective date of the entire bill is this July 1?
Well, let's see, what do we have here?
I think it's Matt has my copy, so,
It
It
is.
is still on passage.
Pat.
oh, it's on passage.
Okay, Matt, we really
That
appreciate
was
you taking the
really
time out of what I'm sure was a busy day.
that's fun.
We're
Did you
gonna-
do good work on the floor?
Yeah.
It was brief and to the point.
You didn't deal with Chip though?
Yeah.
Thank goodness. Okay.
Okay, thank you. We have at least one more item to consider.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for
We
sharing.
really
Copies, Senator.
appreciated you being able to.
I'm in the middle of it for a little while, so as you continue to discuss this, if you need anything, please send out the back
Okay.
email and I will come.
Do you know what?
We'll be in touch.
Would you?
We need to move along.
Because we do.
Thank you.
We need your cell
Yeah,
phone.
we're gonna lose somebody at 3. so.
Oh, we do?
I have
Well,
that supplement for I can share it with you. Okay.
Oh, you have a
Share away.
Yeah, yeah.
So, to recap. By, majority of vote, we have, as a committee, elected to retain the provision regarding, ranked choice voting. Is that, as I understand what we did?
Our straw poll was 3-2. I think.
Correct. And to be fair, I did offer at least what I felt was a compromise to Senator Bielanski. I wanted to remove the word permanently
Which I could support,
on line 12, I know. But I also wanted to push the date out to 2028.
which I couldn't support.
So we wound up in the same place. And that's just the way things go.
Yeah.
So the other issue that came up is section 4 and 5 with regard to the one bite candidacy. And I'm open to discussion again, but I am strongly in favor of retaining that provision in this bill. I think if you run for office and you lose in the primary, better luck next time kind of thing, but that's just me. So if anybody wants to weigh in on that, now's the time, because I'd like to get the decision made. I mean, it's no secret. What we want to do is have this thing up there ready to go. Once we have something else happen across the way, rather than keep dragging this out and adding more to it and changing it. So,
Yeah, I'd like to keep it in.
okay,
I'm good with that.
Sadly, me too.
So as you know, I want to take it out, and what that will mean with ranked choice voting in is this bill doesn't make it out of committee.
Yeah, then I think we switch our votes on ranked choice voting.
well,
Sorry, what?
No, I didn't.
Well, so if ranked choice voting stays in this bill, then
Yeah.
you will vote no, and you will vote no. Ranked choice voting stays in this bill.
Yes.
If this stays in this bill, I will also vote no,
Yeah, so then you only got 2-2.
which means it's a 2-3
Three.
vote.
So then at that point, I think we would go with the 4 versus, sorry. I want a better committee vote than a lower, you know what I'm saying?
This was unforeseen to me a week ago.
I know,
I
and
know.
I clearly didn't communicate myself very well.
I thought we were just hung up on the ranked choice piece. I didn't realize.
Yeah,
I did not do a very good job communicating.
I think you communicated that if one bite stayed in, you were no on the whole bill.
Yes.
That, I've been clear on that
Okay.
from the beginning.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that means you would be a no vote on the whole bill.
Yes.
If it stays in, it's a 4-1 vote. On the,
And ranked choice comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, so you kind of
but,
pitted those, yeah.
but you wouldn't vote for the bill if it took out ranked choice and kept one bite.
Correct.
So again, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. If we keep the ranked choice study in and made it more palatable to our Republican colleagues, how might we do that?
I am looking for a solution and I
So
don't
you
think that quickly
suggested
on my
an
feet.
extended date, which I think would be challenging.
Yeah,
But we could also fall back on something we've fallen back on in previous legislation, which is it needs to come back for full review and vote by the legislature, something like that.
But it's just a report.
I know it's just a report.
Well, it's also the House's version, so I'm assuming we're gonna go to conference committee on this topic. And I know that if you vote against a bill, you're not gonna end up on the conference committee, but I think at least there will be someone who may have voted in favor of ranked choice voting going into the conference committee.
well,
If there's got,
It's going to conference.
yeah, I think it would have to, because we're changing it.
well,
No,
they can
could-
concur.
Oh, true, they could
They could just
concur.
And that's why I kept pressing, the more we change, the less likely it is to just say, let's just go with what they want.
Retro.
Um,
So,
and we're also running out of runway here, to be fair.
Yeah.
But let me suggest this, since again, nothing's happened on the floor. We'll have at least tomorrow. If we can individually talk to each other and find compromise, I'm all for that. If it happens that we can't, we can decide to vote and see where that goes.
right. I guess I might ask
Mhm.
a bold question, but we have, given that it has come down to sort of a party vote. Different from ranked choice voting. So the question I have is the entire Republican caucus against ranked choice voting?
I haven't taken a survey. I think a majority of Republicans probably are.
And I'm just curious, can you just give us a notion of why, given that it is a bipartisan issue in the rest of the country?
Well, I think that's a fairly broad stroke painting. I don't know that it's,
Oh, okay,
I mean, I think there's other states where since it hasn't happened yet, they probably don't want it. It's just a philosophical thing for
for
me.
you, I appreciate it.
And I
As a
think probably
person,
for other folks too. To me, if you vote and you vote for whoever's running and that's the way things go.
so but this is my question is if we, it's very hard to have a major bill come out without the chair's vote. That's a hard thing. But that would that also mean if the ranked choice voting was in it, that the Republicans altogether would vote against this? I guess one of my questions.
I can survey the caucus if you like.
I'd appreciate that. And I would appreciate understanding what the sticking points are, given that it has been accepted. I mean, in some Maine is close. I mean, Maine does this on certain elections. Arizona does it for all elections. There are a couple other states. I mean, so, and I know that the professional group that is advocating for it around the country is bipartisan. We heard from the Republican from Tennessee.
I think he was.
Tennessee who supported it.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious because to me, it's such a party issue, and to me, it's,
I'll try to come back tomorrow with
that would be helpful.
indications. I don't know if I'll be able to say, hey, if the vote was X up, but and particular reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, because I think we're gonna be, whether it's this year or future years, ranked choice voting is an issue that we are gonna be confronted with making a choice about at some point.
Mhm.
And so this is now, you and I have been hearing ranked choice voting
Indeed.
proposals since 2009. So,
So we were a lot younger.
but we weren't as wise.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say that I would like this bill passed. And I would like to have both of those things in the bill. I think that's kind of where Allison and I stand. So my preference is always to have a greater number of people vote in favor of a bill than a fewer number of people.
Sure.
Because I think that will make it passable on the floor, which is kind of my ultimate goal. And I also think that when I think about an elections bill leaving this committee without the Republican chair on it, that saddens me because I think it loses credibility for this bill. So my preference would be to try to assuage those concerns, although I don't agree with them, to get a bill that is passable.
Okay. So we take the next 24 to mull it over.
And we'll vote tomorrow.
Well, if there's nothing else to prevent it. We don't have people knocking at the door anymore saying, hey, I want to add one more thing on that bill. I think we've done tremendous amount of work on this bill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's now 42 pages. I don't know what it was when it came across, but it wasn't 42 pages. I don't think. And, yeah. I
Did a
think-
lot of good work on the write-in.
I think-
At our committee dinner, we talk about what was your favorite section?
We already had beauty lunch. And
Well, that's right, we did, well.
can I just circle back to whether or not we've landed in a space on aligning the path language to the cannabis?
That's our last question.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, I'll agree to do that, so that's why I said we had at least one thing.
Well, good.
That's because I think that makes sense with,
I do too.
We could divide it on the floor. We could take the one by canvas thing.
We could certainly can divide it on the floor. I mean, I ultimately,
That might not be from your point of view, most strategic thing to do.
yeah.
So I think
what I'm
that may
thinking
fail.
about.
I think she shouldn't do that.
I'm not doing that. Yes, that is an option.
Yeah, we can divide the question any way you want, however many sections there are.
If you could be.
Gordon Lemon, 1974.
Okay, another one?
Yeah, well, I think we probably should go off before we start playing a name that tune. So thank you, committee. Thank you, Tim, for your help. And thank you, Megan, for your help too.
You're welcome.
Megan, we really appreciate you stepping in.
So tomorrow's another day and we'll see what comes over. Maybe we got some other things coming over from the house. I don't know.
And good job, Rutland Charter.
Yeah, that's done and effective on passage. So once the governor signed it, they'll be able to buy their police cars and fire engines and